Hey there, fourth trimester listeners. Our program today is proudly sponsored by Family Album, your secure haven for sharing baby photos and videos. Head over to the App Store today, search Family Album, one word, download the app, and start creating a legacy of love, one photo at a time. Hi, I'm Sarah Trott, and welcome to the Fourth Trimester Podcast. I'm a new mama, and this podcast is all about postpartum care for the first few months following birth, the time period also known as the fourth trimester. My postpartum doula, Esther Gallagher, is my co-host. She's a mother, grandmother, perinatal educator, birth and postpartum care provider. Fourth trimester care, our topic, is about the practical, emotional, and social support parents and baby require. And importantly, it helps set the tone for the continuing journey of parenting. Hey everybody, this is Sarah Trott from the Fourth Trimester Podcast, and before we kick off this episode, I wanted to share with you something that's a little bit special for this episode. We joined up with the guest from this show, Keli Garza, to offer all of our listeners a little bit of a perk. So here it is. After listening to the show and hearing more information, we highly encourage you to go to Keli's website, which is steamychick.com, and you can use coupon code fourth trimester, all one word, fourth trimester, to benefit from free shipping, a $40 value, which is something she's got on offer for everyone at the moment, but I don't know how long that will last. But plus another $20 off the Vaginal Steam Sauna package, and also $20 off an e-course called Postpartum Peristeam Care, How to Use Vaginal Steaming for Full Recovery After Birth. You can find links to these things and the coupon code on the website fourthtrimesterpodcast.com. So please take advantage. We'd love for all of our listeners to benefit from this exclusive offer. And without further ado, on to the show. Thank you. Hi, this is Sarah Trott. Welcome back to the Fourth Trimester Podcast. Today we have a guest, Keli Garza, with us, and I'll introduce her in a moment. Esther Gallagher is also on the podcast with us today, so it's a full house. Hooray! As a reminder, the fourthtrimesterpodcast.com website is where you need to go to find all of our social pages. You can click through from there onto our Facebook and our Twitter and our other social accounts, Pinterest, Instagram. You can also sign up for our newsletter by going to the top of the page. There's a button for newsletter. Please do sign up if you haven't done so already. And there's also a link for you to join us as sponsors through patreon.com. If you think that you have it in your heart to just sponsor us, please do. It would go a long way. We want to get some better recording equipment. Today we have an awesome topic. It's something I didn't know a lot about. Esther, I'm sure you knew all about it, but the topic is vaginal steaming. And we have Keli Garza here today, who's an expert in this area. She holds a master's degree in international development, and she graduated cum laude. She is a social science researcher by academic training, and she's spent the past several years doing women's health research and has founded a new field of discipline called Peristeam Hydrotherapy. So I think that's just another way of saying vaginal steaming. You can set me straight on that, Keli.
Yeah.
Having recorded, okay, perfect. Having recorded over 700 Peristeam case studies, she holds the only known research database of its kind. She's worked to develop vaginal steam treatment protocols, which are now becoming the industry standard. Her approach is unique in that she tailors the treatment based on different menstrual patterns, and she works with an Oriental medicine doctor who prescribes specific herbs in the formulas. At Steamy Chick, Keli oversees all operations and instructs online e-courses, and steamychick.com is her website, so you can go there and read more about all of that. But Keli, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so honored to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We here at the Fourth Trimester Podcast would love to hear your experiences with your own fourth trimester.
Sure. Okay, well, I got pregnant with my first daughter, Lotus, when I was 33. And at the time, I had been using vaginal steaming for a couple of years. At the end of my period, I'd heard that, after your period is over, you do one vaginal steam, and then that's it, And so I had been using it like that for a couple of years. But when I was pregnant with Lotus, I was really focused on setting up a postpartum plan for myself. And so I was, part of a Facebook group, of course, of expecting moms, a secret group. And I was I did an unassisted birth. So this was a group of women who were doing unassisted births. And so one of them was from Ghana. And she mentioned that that in Ghana, they do 30 days of vaginal steaming after giving birth. And I was like, oh my gosh, vaginal steaming, I do that. I have a vaginal steam sauna. So I decided that I would do 30 days of vaginal steaming as part of my postpartum plan. So I had that. And then I had read a book called Sitting Moon. Have you heard of that book, Sarah?
No, I'm fascinated to know more about it.
Okay, so it's Sitting Moon, and it's by an acupuncturist named Jessica Chen. I hope I'm getting it right. And she was writing all about the Taiwanese postpartum experience. And basically in Taiwan, women look forward to their postpartum month because they are treated like queens. Okay?
I love
that. So they have the most advanced, probably postpartum protocol that I've ever heard of in the world. And okay, so now how did I get this book? I got this book because I was going to an acupuncturist, and this was before I was pregnant or interested in anything birth related. And my sister was pregnant a couple years before my first pregnancy. And I was like, do you have any books like for her during pregnancy? And they were like, no. They were like, but here's one about postpartum. I'm like, postpartum? That's already after. I'm like, who cares? I really wasn't like, I didn't get it. But since they didn't have any other books, I was like, okay, I guess I'll get that. So I got that book and I gave it to my sister. And so she and the book was all about how that women need, like, the postpartum month is a time, it's a golden opportunity, they consider it, for a woman's life where she has a chance to completely change her course of health. She has a chance to completely reset, her health and be incredibly healthy moving forward. And according to traditional Chinese medicine, a lot of headache, pains, and prolapse, and all kinds of women's issues, they actually relate it back to the woman not properly recovering postpartum. So proper postpartum recovery is huge in Chinese medicine. And specifically in Taiwan, they have this really great system where they have like these hotels that women go to. They're like these postpartum hotels, and the women receive 5 meals per day that are prepared for them, and all they do is hang out in the suite with the baby and nap all day long. There are night nurses that take care of the baby, anytime there's naps, so that the mom she's supposed to get like 10 hours of sleep every night and nap during the day as well. So like they just really have, and the mother's not supposed to do any work. She's not even supposed to, they barely even let her be on her feet. She can do stretching in bed, and she could go to the bathroom and shower and all that. But for the most part, they just want her to be resting in bed this whole time, and they wait on her like she's a queen. And so that's what the book talks about. And now Jessica Chen grew up in the US, so she's like, she basically has kind of like a modified, rendition of this that she did for her own postpartum care. And so in the book, she has all of these postpartum meal plans for how to do your postpartum, period. So anyhow, so when I was postpartum, I was like, okay, I definitely want to do all of those meal plans. And then I found out about the vaginal steaming. So I decided I would definitely do the vaginal steaming. And I invited my mother-in-law to come and stay with me. She wanted to. She came to stay with us, and she helped with the housework and with the cooking for that month. And it was a really beautiful experience. Like, I have to say, I felt healthier. I was also taking, so with the postpartum meal plans, they had all these herbs that you could take as well. So I was taking a postpartum herbal formula that was made by an acupuncturist. And I felt better than I had ever felt in my whole life during that postpartum period, just being cared for and being able to, bond with the baby. So I did it. I did the 30 days of vaginal steaming, and I did the 30 days of eating the postpartum meals. Some of them were, pretty foreign. Like I was eating liver soup with goji berries in it and all these other, traditional meals. But, my breast milk was pumping. I had so much breast milk. My baby gained 4 pounds in the first month, and she's only, normal would be like 1 pound. She gained 4 pounds. It was crazy. so it was a really interesting experience. And ever since, I've been very passionate about the fourth trimester and that women properly prepare for it. Because if you properly prepare for it, it will be so wonderful. But what I see from so many of my other friends that go through the experience is that they're not prepared, and they spend, all of the time buying baby gear and very little money on the actual mom and her recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very little probably monetary investment, but also mental and emotional investment, preparing oneself and actually thinking about what that will be like. We spend a ton of time on this show talking about that piece of it. That's like, oh, you think about your nursery and you think about all of these other things, but and you think about the baby, which is like the right priority for sure. But also, like, the point that we like to make over and over is parents are much better suited to care for the baby if they themselves are taken care of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. How are you going to take care of your baby and your uterus is falling out? You know what I mean? Like, and yes. I feel like this is one of the reasons, and you want to take care of your baby, but your breast milk hasn't come in, and so the baby cries. When you have a lot of breast milk, you have a baby that doesn't cry, and getting, so with that whole postpartum meal plan, the idea is that you give the mom herbs and the right soup as soon as possible after giving birth, within an hour, because that brings her breast milk in. And I did find that to be, something, just one less thing to worry about, for sure. And my baby, she never cried. And I attribute it to the breast milk.
So Keli, I just want to interrupt for a moment and just say that I think the Asian orientation towards postpartum care, and I've said this for 4 decades now, is much more informed and healthy and normalizing and appropriate to the kind of human condition when it comes to giving birth to our babies and how that works. I want us to be careful on this podcast about attributing things to things. It's normal and physiological that your breast milk is going to come in. Okay. I think the wonderful soups and herbs are a wonderful support, but they don't cause things to happen or not happen. So, I myself am continually recommending all of these things to my clients or any women that I come in contact with. So I just want to be the person to say, like, I work in postpartum homes every day. That's what I do. And I think it's really wonderful and awesome. And, here we have these wonderful services now around us because we're lucky to live in the Bay Area and have places where women who otherwise would not have the first clue how to prepare these very nourishing and supportive meals and other supports, herbs, etc., can find access to these things. You're one of those resources, which is awesome. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, the body is hopefully prepared to do all these things, and the body benefits deeply from these supports.
I think that's very well said, Esther.
And I always like to add kind of a practical layer on discussions like this I've had with friends of mine, and just, people I've met preparing to have a baby, thinking about it, just around, well, it's certainly not going to hurt. And if it adds something positive and it makes you feel good and it makes your family feel good, then do it. Give yourself that love and support. Create that environment that makes you feel the way you want to feel. And I think what you eat and how you practice and how you care for yourself is all part of that.
Absolutely. In traditional Chinese medicine, they totally associate what the mom is eating with whether or not her breast milk is going to come in. So after this postpartum experience, anytime anybody had low breast milk, they would, reach out to me. And a lot of times I'd say like, well, what are you eating? And they're like, whatever I can with, just snacking here and there. And it's like, okay, well, focus on eating. And a lot of times that alone, I did notice, had an improvement. However, in Western medicine, we don't see it that way. And a lot of times, and absolutely, like what you said, Esther, the breast milk comes in naturally. That's part of, what is supposed to happen. And the body knows how to do it naturally. But sometimes if I do believe that if we don't support the body properly, that's where we end up with problems, because not everybody's breast milk comes in,
Right. And I also agree with you very deeply, Keli, that, a mom may do a superlative job in the biological sense of producing milk and healing and recovering in those first 40 days without support. However, I think this perspective that's so wise in Chinese medicine and around the world, really, typically in Asian traditions, is that it doesn't mean, even when things go well, it doesn't mean that the mom's body isn't overtaxed if it isn't well nourished. And that overtaxation will, in the end, become erosive to the mother's well-being in her lifetime. And this is what I just love about the kinds of work that we do and the kinds of information we try to give women, which is you count in this process. You get to have this life, and you get to go on from this life, and being taken care of well and deeply in the fourth trimester serves you not only in the immediate present, but for the rest of your life. As you said, Keli, at the beginning, and I'm always thrilled when I hear that reiterated. So thank you. Do you want to tell us any more about your fourth trimester? And then, of course, we can't wait to hear about vaginal steaming. Or you're calling it peristeaming. Is that correct? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, I call it vaginal steaming, because that's, what the term that we're familiar with. But I am working on professionalizing the practice. And in the professional term that I use for it is Peristeam hydrotherapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, technically, we're talking about the perineum.
Yeah,
we're not going up inside the vagina, which is an internal organ. Yeah.
Well, the only last thing that I would add, just to go from what you were saying, Esther, is that, for moms to remember that they count, after giving birth, is that actually I did receive some pushback when I was pregnant and I was planning my postpartum month. There were some people behind my back that were whispering that I was so selfish. I was so selfish because I was focused on funding my postpartum month. And, so some of my family members were whispering this. And then, of course, another family member, let me know. And it was really a moment for me.
Yeah.
When I had to sit there and think about it, like, am I being selfish? And,
no.
And it's something that I heard somebody else mention as well when they were planning for a postpartum month, which is just like, I don't want people to think I'm so selfish or so self-involved. So it's just something to be aware of and to think about ahead of the time that there might be that perception. And that's somehow a strange perception that we have in the West, but it might happen,
Well, not only that, but I think that as with so many of these sort of anti-humane orientations in our world, we do have a way, if we've grown up in this culture, of having internalized that. Like, I don't matter and I'm going to be okay. And that's just how it's going to be. So there isn't any need for looking ahead to my well-being. Yeah, I just, I really think it's interesting that, there's that question, like, why are you being so selfish? And I think the best answer in some ways is, well, because someday I might be a grandmother. If I'm having a child now, I need to survive long enough to support my child when they have a child.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, please don't anyone feel selfish. Taking care of yourself is the best thing you can do for your baby, because it's not an either or choice. You can take care of your baby and take care of yourself. And in fact, take care of yourself because it means that if you sleep and you eat and you do the things that you need to do at a base level, then, and you recover well, it means you have more energy and resources available for your infant.
Absolutely.
So please no one listening feel selfish. No, you're not. You're doing the right thing. You're being the opposite of selfish. You're being giving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not only that, you would have been praised for spending thousands of dollars on your wedding, which is one day of your life, right? And being relative to the world rather indulgent for one day. And yet this is going to be, many, many, many years of your life that you're now a parent that needs to be in reasonable shape for the project of parenting. So,
What is vaginal steaming?
Okay, vaginal steaming is an ancient practice. It has been practiced all over the entire world. All over Africa. I found it all over Asia, the Middle East, in different parts of Europe. I found it in Italy, Sweden, and Germany, in different Native American tribes, in both the Navajo tribe and the Lakota tribe, as well as down in Guatemala with the Mayans. It's something that's practiced in Suriname, in the Caribbean, in Haiti and Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and then it's also practiced in the South Pacific. So literally everywhere in the world where you can find women, vaginal steaming is practiced. And what it is it's something that it's traditionally midwives used to administer for postpartum care. So after a woman would have a baby, she would do a vaginal steam. So vaginal steaming, the way it looks like is there's basically going to be a pot with herbs in it, and heated, so steam rising, and that the mother can sit on a steam seat, with a hole in it, or on a birthing chair, or sometimes they'll have her squat and somebody will support her. And so she sits there and lets the steam, go between the legs to the perineum. And depending on how long she sits there, steam actually will rise and help to pull all of the postpartum matter and lochia down out of the uterus. In addition, the steam also helps to tighten the skin so that it tightens the vaginal canal back up. And it also helps to push the uterus and the organs back up into place, because rising steam pushes things up. And so it is an ideal treatment for postpartum recovery, to actually help the body go back to its pre-pregnancy state.
So people do steaming whether or not they have a baby, just for general health. Is that right?
Yes. So I found steaming in, I think, 26 countries at this point. And every single one of those places, steaming is used for postpartum care. In about half of those places, it's also used for gynecological care, whether it's a preventative practice. So in South Korea, for example, I talked to a South Korean woman who told me they use it once a month after the period is over. And it's just used, to help make sure that, there's nothing left over in the uterus, and that no problems arise. And so what the woman told me is, if you do your vaginal steam once a month after the period, you'll never have to, have any problems. That's what she told me. So she said, but you can also use it if there's any problems. The first thing you should do is do a vaginal steaming. So that was, it's commonly used in Korea for as a preventative measure, and then also to treat gynecological disorders. And so there are other places where it's also used for gynecological disorders. But what in my research, what I always know, what it's used for, when it's used, and which herbs are used. And what I found is that the postpartum use of vaginal steaming is universal. And also that it's most commonly found used among midwives, and usually traditional midwives. So it's not a common practice in the West, and in certain places, everybody in the country does it. So, for example, the country of Palau, everyone does it. Cambodia, everybody does it. And then you've got Korea and Haiti. Those are some of the places in the world where it's actually just common practice. And everybody knows about it and everybody does it. But then there's other places, some women know about it. But it is practiced there. So for example, in Mexico, it's practiced, but it's practiced in the indigenous communities by the traditional midwives. So the general population doesn't necessarily know about it, but the traditional midwives that still are in practice in the indigenous communities are aware of the practice and they're using it.
I had midwifery training, and I have been a postpartum doula for a very long time. And this is relatively new to me. I of course, provide my clients with sitz baths where they get into the bathtub and enjoy a warm, shallow bath for their vulva and, their whole perineal area. But only this year did I start hearing about this steaming approach, which sounds kind of lovely, I have to say, kind of fun and different. But I do have a couple of questions. So, for instance, are there specific remedies for, say, perineal tears? Are there specific remedies, whether these are herbal or technical, for hemorrhoids? Are there specific remedies for urethritis or, if a mom's having any kind of urinary incontinence? So can you speak to those specifics?
So around the world, there are different herbal remedies. Like usually the herbs are going to vary by location because there are different plants that grow everywhere in the world. So my company, I make an herbal blend that is for postpartum use. And so the herbs included and necessary for postpartum recovery, for example, if you have a tear, you're going to want some herbs that are going to help to disinfect that tear. You don't want it to get infected. And it's going to help it, as long as it's clean, it's going to heal up quickly, right? So I include disinfecting herbs in there in case there's any tears, and that's also helpful for when there are stitches as well. And then for hemorrhoids happen. The woman can use the steaming for hemorrhoids, and in fact, they work really quickly to help resolve postpartum hemorrhoids. And so what the woman does is she has to tilt back and let the steam hit the rectum. And I include herbs in the blend that help to tighten the skin and help to reduce skin swelling. And those are the herbs that help to resolve those postpartum hemorrhoids. And then as far as incontinence, so really the best thing to do is to do, in my opinion, the best thing to do is to do a postpartum steam protocol and to do it for 30 days in a row. So with my first baby, I was able to do the postpartum steaming for 30 days in a row. And with my second, I wasn't. There were a couple, things that got in the way. And I noticed a huge difference in the recovery when I was able to do those 30 days of steaming back to back. And my body went entirely back to its pre-pregnancy state. And one of the interesting, moments was when the midwife came and came to do a checkup after a week. And she said, she felt around, and she said, "Oh my gosh," she says, "your uterus is back down to its normal size." She says, "Your uterus is the size that it should be 4 weeks from now." And I was like, yeah, well, I was like, I've been doing vaginal steaming. I don't know if that, has something to do with it. But yeah, but I believe
Nice.
what, helping tightening the vaginal canal and getting the uterus, getting all of the lochia to come out of the uterus, which happens a lot quicker than without the steaming. So like, for example, I didn't have any lochia I think it was after my 5th steam. I started steaming the day after giving birth. So like within the first week after giving birth, I didn't have, a drop of lochia after that.
Define what lochia is in case anyone doesn't know.
It's the blood that happens after you have a baby. So women have to wear menstrual pads because there's blood and other, that's matter out. So that's referred to as lochia. So lochia it's common for it to last for 4 to 6 weeks. When I was doing the postpartum steaming, when I did the first steam, there was lochia that actually came out, into the pot, and then the second day as well. So every day for the first for the first few steams, lochia was coming out, but after that, there was no more lochia coming out. And then I still did see some spotting of lochia for a couple days. And then after the 5th steam, I didn't have any lochia anymore at all. So I think that what's happening is you pull that lochia out of there, and then the uterus is able to go back to its size, as well as I think that the herbs, are helpful in getting that to go back down to its size. And then also all the circulation that comes to the area, is also, providing that therapy. And so, and then in addition to that, I had really bad swelling, and so I wasn't even able to identify my body after I gave birth. Like I just didn't even know what was what. And I did have prolapse. My cervix was all the way down, almost coming out. And that steaming alone was able to, within a week, push everything back up into its place. So I never ended up having any bladder incontinence, because if all of the organs go back into place, I don't know everything that goes into bladder incontinence, but having all of the organs in place is going to be important to preventing that from becoming a problem. And so I have worked with women who have had bladder incontinence, and after doing steaming, they've been able to resolve the problem entirely. And this is not even just postpartum, but, they've had the problem since after giving birth, and then they were able to resolve the problem years later. And one thing that I did notice is that these women all had prolapse was an issue.
Hey, fellow parents, can we take a moment to reflect on the joyous chaos that is parenthood? You know those days when our hearts swell with love at the sight of our little ones and we're bursting at the seams to share every adorable moment with the world. But let's be real. Some things are better kept in the family, and your loved ones who matter the most aren't always close by, and they might not be that tech savvy either. So how can you easily share your baby's beautiful growth with loved ones while keeping your precious memories secure? I remember the frustration of trying to use some of the big tech photo solutions, only to find they fell short of what I needed. That's when I stumbled upon something truly remarkable, the Family Album app. The Family Album app was created to give parents a secure and easy way to share photos and videos with loved ones. It's an orderly and totally secure haven for your family's personal memories. I love that there's no third-party ads, no unwanted eyes, unlimited storage, and that it's totally free. So to all the parents who are out there still trying to use other messaging apps for your kids' photos, it's time to level up your family photo game with a free photo sharing app. Head over to the App Store today, search Family Album, one word, download the app, and start creating a legacy of love one photo at a time.
I'm curious, Keli, it just occurred to me to ask whether you think that there's a hormonal component to the herbs and how they're accomplishing the work that they're doing in the body.
That's a really good question, and one that I definitely want to research further. I recently was doing some research about using vaginal steaming to recover from sexual trauma. And there's somebody who I work with, my colleague Marcia Lopez, and I actually learned about vaginal steaming from Marcia. And she's very cutting edge. She uses vaginal steaming for recovery from sexual trauma. And so she is the one that mentioned, she said, steaming affects the vagus nerve. It stimulates the vagus nerve. So, I was doing some research to write this article. And so I was looking into it. I was like, okay, so the vagus nerve, it's like, how does this work? And so what I found out is that the vagus nerve is, a nerve, that stretches throughout our body. And that when that nerve is stimulated, it can put the body into a fight or flight response. And that in order to, and that it's also, if it's stimulated, it can help to send the body into a relaxed state of trust and love. And the way that it can send the body into the relaxed state is because the nerve, when stimulated, can release oxytocin. So all of this is very interesting. Oxytocin, that's one of the hormones, right? So now how does the nerve release oxytocin? Because the nerve is, okay, so I really do need to research this more. I'm absolutely not an expert in this area, but the nerve, I believe, is mainly in the brain, and it has neurotransmitters that go down to the stomach and to other and throughout other parts of the body. So for example, when somebody's nervous and they get butterflies in the stomach, this vagus nerve is the one that's responsible. Yeah, exactly. So then I was like, so how does vaginal steaming stimulate it, as Lopez had suggested? So I found a study by the Northeastern Medical University, I believe in Ohio, and I'll have to send you guys any corrections to this if I'm getting any of this wrong. There was a study in 1999. Where they discovered that there are inputs that communicate directly to the vagus nerve that are along the vaginal canal, in the cervix, and along the uterine walls. There are inputs that communicate directly to the vagus nerve. So when those areas are stimulated, it sends neurotransmitters directly up to the brain that can be responsible for releasing oxytocin, or that can, yeah. So, okay, so when you put all of that together, if you guys are following me, doing a vaginal steam that touches that where the steam absolutely goes into the vaginal canal and touches the bottom of the cervix, doing a vaginal steam is stimulating the vagus nerve, which can release oxytocin directly. And so oxytocin, we know, is responsible for a mother's feelings of love and attachment to her baby. And then it's also involved in breast milk production. So now all of this, it has a lot of implications and it needs to be studied further, but it's pretty exciting. And one of the...
Well, and oxytocin is the hormone that contracts the uterus. So just to add in that thing, but also oxytocin works that way in everyone, not just mothers.
Yeah, exactly.
That connection and bonding happens in the presence of oxytocin. So, and it's it is also typically, I don't think it's going too far off the rails to say that oxytocin is an anti-anxiety hormone. So
absolutely.
You mentioned fight and flight. There's a third vagus nerve response or just trauma response, which is freeze, which is what women typically do. We don't flee and we don't fight. We freeze during stressful circumstances, and then we hold the trauma in our bodies somatically. And so doing something that addresses that whole central nervous system of trauma response would potentially be very highly effective.
Thank you so much for talking more about that. And that's what I said. I need to learn more about it. It's just so interesting that it might be able to stimulate that directly. And one of the side effects that I always hear and that I've noticed myself with vaginal steaming is women report feeling very relaxed afterwards. Women say, oh, it's so relaxing. I love doing it. I don't know if it's helping with my cramps, but it's just so relaxing. That's usually one of the first things that women report. And then another thing that women report is also feeling aroused, that their libido, gets stimulated, and that they feel like that they are having more pleasure, when they have a sexual experience after vaginal steaming. And so those are all things that I also understand that oxytocin is going to be, a factor.
Right. All of these things are also stimulated by breastfeeding, by the way, like all of these things. So, so it's a wonderful kind of tandem relationship. And as you're talking about all this, I realize that the sitz baths that I do for my moms have essentially accomplish a very similar thing. The only difference is they're not in a squatting position. They're in a relaxed back position.
Well, sitz baths are incredible. Sitz baths so hard to say. Sitz baths are great. And but there is one big difference between a sitz bath and a vaginal steam. The sitz bath only touches what it touches, because the water in that case is not in a steaming state. But when a woman is doing the vaginal steaming, the steam is rising. And so the steam will actually, at first, the steam is just hitting the perineal area. But after a couple minutes, you actually can feel the vaginal canal open, and you feel it ascend the vaginal canal. So the steam is able to, again, water in the form of steam is able to reach water would, because, especially for a postpartum mother where the cervix is open, that steam is actually able to go up into the uterus as long as that cervix is open. So sitz baths are wonderful. And the added benefit of doing the steaming is that the steam is able to get further as far as, getting up into the reproductive organs.
On a practical note, how hot is this stuff? Should I be worried? Am I going to get burned?
Yeah, you should if you don't, but it's really important to make sure that it's comfortable. Just like for a nice sitz bath, you would make sure that it was a comfortable temperature. For the vaginal steam, it would also need to be a comfortable temperature. So, just test the heat beforehand, and just like how you would if you're getting into a shower or a bath, just test it beforehand and make sure that it's comfortable. There's no benefit to it burning you. You don't get more clean in a shower if it's scalding hot. You don't have more benefit with the vaginal steam if it's scalding hot. It's just make sure that it's, a mild, comfortable temperature, and that's what's going to be best.
Okay. And so tell us more about the practicalities here. Like, I'm sure lots of our listeners are hugely interested now in trying this out and making sure that they have the right gear and the right setup. Like, I'm sure safety and cleanliness is of the utmost importance. You have these products available. Where can they find them? I know we have a special offer for our listeners as well that I want everyone to take advantage of. Tell us more about the product itself and how someone could get one so that they aren't trying to use something inappropriate.
Gotcha. Okay, so I make vaginal steam saunas, and it's going to be like a wooden box seat, and it's got a hole in the top, and inside there's going to be a pot, and my package comes with 10 packets of herbs, which is enough for 10 steam sessions, or even 20 if you want to reuse the herbs, you can. So the entire vaginal steam sauna package is available on the Steamy Chick website, www.steamychick.com, and I have a special offer for the fourth trimester listeners, which is that if you want to use the coupon code Fourth Trimester, then you will have free shipping for the vaginal steam sauna. And you can do home setups, but they're not always very comfortable, and there are situations where it's women don't really put together something that that works very well. So I do think that it's a good idea to invest in the setup. And as far as my company goes, after I did my postpartum steaming, one of my friends came over to visit me and the baby, and she said, "Keli, what is that witch chair in the corner?" So I was like, "Oh, that's my vaginal steam sauna," and she started to tell everybody about it, and that's how I started selling them. And I was at home with my baby, and I was getting these phone calls from people and these text messages from everywhere that wanted these vaginal steam saunas. And I was like, why is everybody coming to me for this? And I discovered that there's nowhere that you can buy vaginal steam saunas in the United States. There's nobody that makes them. So I did find that, if you're in South Korea, you could buy them. And I think they have some in Indonesia as well. But in the United States, nobody makes them. And so I was like, okay, so this is why everybody's, trying to get them from me. And so I started making them when I was at home with my baby, and I founded the company Steamy Chick. And so I'm the first manufacturer of vaginal steam saunas in the United States. And now there are a couple more, companies, but I'm still the largest. And last month we sold 75 vaginal steam saunas. So it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's really exciting. And we have everything that you would need, including courses for doulas and midwives and other birth workers that are interested in learning more about vaginal steaming and offering it to their clients. Yeah.
That's very exciting. Maybe we'll have you come to our doula group. Do a little talk. So here's a question that harkens back to the pre-practicalities and business portion. I'm a grandmother who's also post-menopausal, and there were definitely interesting and profound changes to my whole physiology, having gone through the menopausal change. Do you know of uses for women beyond the postpartum period? You touched on that a little bit, but I'd just like you to say another paragraph about once you've given birth, had your baby, made your recovery. If you're still having periods, you could be doing this once a month, or if any issues crop up. It sounds like, right? This is a lifelong investment potentially. Am I correct?
Yeah, vaginal steaming is good at all different stages of a woman's life. So I think, going back to the beginning, when a woman first has her period, when a girl first has her period, at the menarche, that's a really important time for a woman, for us to teach a girl about vaginal steaming and to do a vaginal steam after her first period. That way she knows anytime she ever has any problems arise, she could use it. So it could also be used in case there are menstrual cramps or any disorders that arise, such as fibroids, cysts, or endometriosis. I've worked with hundreds of women, and there are, dozens of case studies of women that have healed their fibroids, their ovarian cysts, their Bartholin cysts, or their fibroids with vaginal steaming. So it's incredible to be, as a first level, to be able to address any issues that arise. There have also been cases of HPV that have disappeared, and even cases of cervical cancer, which is like, it's incredible. We don't know if it was the steaming that caused it to go away, but it went away, and these are the two cases where that has happened. And so, then, postpartum, of course, is great for fertility. It's wonderful when women are having difficulty conceiving. If there's any brown or black old residue at the beginning or end of the period, if there are any clots, then that might be a sign that the woman hasn't been getting her full, uterine cleanse during her period, and there might be old residue in there, and that can become an issue for the fetus to implant and for the pregnancy to carry out and be successful. So if there's any old residue in there, black or brown blood, then that would be a good time for a woman to steam for her fertility purposes. And then, of course, we talked in depth about postpartum, and then we get to our menopause and post-menopause. So the first woman that I sold a vaginal steam sauna to, she was in her 40s, and she all of a sudden was having these heavy periods that were 10 days long with huge clots. And, along with all of it came really bad cramps and headaches. And so I was listening to her, and she said that these periods dated back to her last birth, which was, I think it had been about 4 years. So I, was thinking about it. I said, it sounds like it sounds like there's a lot of old residue in there. And perhaps if you get all that old residue out, it will get rid of the cramps, which was my thought. She did her steaming before her period. She steamed for 3 nights in a row. And her next period was only 5 days long with only medium flow. She didn't have that heavy flow anymore. And she still had clots, but she actually had more clots than she had ever had before. Well, her very next period was completely clean. There was no clots in there. So what really happens is, when a woman does the first steaming, it pulls out all of that old residue and she gets a cleanse. And then the second and third period will usually be entirely clean. And so this woman, she had been told by her doctor and her friends and her neighbors, that's just what you're going to have to go through for menopause. And
don't get me started, Keli.
And she was able to do something to help it. So that was really great.
That is fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. And so she was a birth educator. And so she started to just tell everybody about it. And really, I have to credit her with the whole reason why I have a successful company now, because she just couldn't stop telling people about her experience with vaginal steaming. And then everybody was coming to me to buy their own steam sauna. And I was like, no, you can just use hers. And they're like, no, I want my own. So that's why I have a company.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so that's one of the issues that women do face during menopause, and that they don't get very much help with. And it really concerns me and bothers me that women aren't getting help. That heavy bleeding is dangerous for the body.
Yeah.
That's not a normal period, and that's not what a woman has to live through and sometimes women are being told, that that's just what they're going to have to deal with for 10 years, and it's unfortunate. So vaginal steaming has shown success in that. And I use herbs in my blend that help to regulate bleeding, that help to reduce heavy bleeding. And I believe that those are important in that. But I also think it's just the matter of get old residue out, because what happens is the arteries are trying to flush the uterus clean. They're like, there's gunk in there, just send some more blood, flush it out, because the blood is actually a flushing agent. And so once you can get that old residue out of there, the body is no longer sending the signal that it needs to flush more. And also the cramps are the same thing. The cramps are happening because the uterus is like, it's something stuck. Let me contract and help it to come out. And so both of those things will go away once that old residue is cleared out, which is huge. So now let's get on to postmenopause. After a woman is no longer having her period, sometimes women have phantom period symptoms. They report that it's like they get their period every month. They get, the swollen breasts, they can get cramping, and they get emotional, but then there's just no period, and so some women report that for phantom cramping, absolutely, when a woman finished her period, there was old residue left in there. So her body is still trying to send a cleanse that the uterus, or send a message that her uterus needs a cleanse, and the uterus is still cramping and trying to get it out. So all of the women with phantom period symptoms that have done vaginal steaming have been able to get rid of those phantom period symptoms for good. So that's great. And so some of these women, they haven't had period in 10, 20 years, some of them, but they'll steam and brown stuff comes out, or clots come out. And then after that stuff comes out, they're good. So it's been really good, because again, those women aren't getting much help. They are told that they could do a hysterectomy if they don't want those issues anymore, which is a pretty, serious procedure, just to get rid of some cramping. You know what I mean? So
it's a very serious procedure, and it takes a very long time to recover from.
Yeah, and doctors don't always tell that to women. They don't always mention, how serious it is. And so some women do it because they only think that's the only option. Okay. Also, postmenopause, women still get infections, and that's something that I haven't really talked about. Vaginal steaming helps to get rid of bacterial vaginosis and yeast infections. So it can help with a woman that is postmenopause as well. And then also, I haven't studied UTIs too much, but I have heard a lot of reports from my customers that it's resolved their UTIs as well. So, And then,
well, if it has the effect, sorry, just to interrupt again, if it has the effect of helping moisturize and reinforce vaginal tissue so that it's more sturdy and healthy, and it has a hormonal effect that also reinforces that, then for postmenopausal women who, for instance, are still having sex, that's going to be more comfortable. That urethra is not going to be as irritable if there's a kind of just a baseline level of tissue health supporting around there. And
very good point.
I'm just thinking of the possibilities, Kelly, because
that's actually,
the incontinence is a hormonal issue often.
okay.
And so if you're using a blend that helps support the work that the ovaries just aren't doing anymore, then you're helping the body with this. So that makes me wonder, Kelly, I have one last question, and I know we're going to need to wrap up pretty soon, but it sounds like, and you mentioned this very early on, but I wanted to come back around to it. It sounds like depending on the issue a woman might be experiencing, she may want to be working with different herbal blends. And what's your recommendation for a woman who might be, I know you could probably get a one-size-fits-all blend and use it once a month, and that sounds great. But what if a woman thought, well, gee, I'm really working with a chronic condition, or what's become chronic incontinence? Maybe I need to be working with specific set of herbs. Is that possible?
Yeah. For incontinence, the best herbs that I would recommend are the Steamy Chick Gentle herbs, because they have really, again, they're going to help to get all of the organs back into place and to tighten everything up. And that can be really useful for incontinence. Then for my postmenopause women, I have a blend. I call them my hot chicks. I call the postmenopause crowd the hot chicks. Yeah. And I have a cooling herb blend to keep them cool, because often that heat and that dryness becomes an issue, and it makes sex painful. And so the cooling herbs are the ones for the postmenopause. And then I'll just warn anybody who's postmenopausal, it wakes up the libido like a lion. This is what the women have reported back. And then for postpartum, let's get back to our postpartum moms. The best blend are the cleansing herbs, because they're going to disinfect any tears, and they're going to help to clean out the uterus as quickly as possible.
I love this information. I've learned so much, and I just wish I knew about this sooner. My goodness.
Me too.
Oh, it's such a neat thing. I'm going to start doing it. I hope all of our listeners start doing it. Definitely go order your steam sauna. Use the code Fourth Trimester, all one word, and get free shipping. That's such a nice offer. Thank you so much, Kelly, for giving that to our listeners as an exclusive offer. And I have to just say, I was in Las Vegas last weekend, and I was talking about this upcoming episode.
But what stays in Las Vegas?
Yeah, exactly. Here's something that came back from Las Vegas. I was talking to this couple, and they were just laughing because they're like, vaginal steaming, that sounds so interesting and cool and blah, blah, blah. But she said, maybe for men. Do men do this? And I said, I don't think so, but I'm just going to pass on the question.
Okay. I have heard that men do it, but I myself have never been able to get a man to do it. Okay. So they're just not interested. They just make all kinds of jokes. They're like, am I going to get a vagina if I do this? Blah, blah, blah,
Oh my gosh.
But the reality is that because men suffer from hemorrhoids, that it can help with hemorrhoids. And then also, I heard a claim in Korea. I was looking at this, they have this vaginal steam sauna made out of red clay with infrared lights. It costs like $1,000. But I was looking at it, and specifically on the product, like user guide, it was saying that men and women have used it to to heal colon cancer or to treat colon cancer.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're like a little bit less, like they probably don't have as many laws as we do in this country about being able to claim whether or not something cures cancer. But yeah, specifically they said it cures colon cancer. So,
well, and think about prostate.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
I mean, the prostate is right above the perineum in men, right? Like if you were to massage their perineum, you're basically massaging into the prostate. I think just getting men to squat
could be helpful.
Let alone once a month would be great. But just think like every month when you're having your period, you could have a little steamy session together where you just sit and chat and, wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't that just change our relationships, at least heterosexual ones, a lot?
Oh my gosh, you could do a little spa. You could do a mud mask while you're sitting there.
I'm telling you.
Chit chat.
Yes. Yeah, you could do each other's toenails. Oh my gosh.
So fun.
It would be great.
Okay. SteamyChick.com. Go order your sauna. Order one for your friend who's expecting a baby. Parents, order one for your daughters and your sons at this point. That sounds like a really fun thing for men too. So we're all about it. Thank you so much, Keli, for being a guest on our program.
Yes,
thank you so much for having me, ladies.
We loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have fourthtrimesterpodcast.com, our site where you can go and sign up for our newsletter and sponsor us and find all of our social connections. So please go and do all of that, and we'll talk to you next time. See you later. Bye-bye. You can subscribe to this podcast in order to hear more from us. Thank you for listening, everyone, and I hope you'll join us next time on the Fourth Trimester. The theme music on this podcast was created by Sean Trott. Hear more at soundcloud.com/Sean Trott. Special thanks to my true loves, my husband Ben, daughter Penelope, and baby girl Evelyn. Don't forget to share the Fourth Trimester Podcast with any new and expecting parents. I'm Sarah Trott. Goodbye for now.
Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I'll sing a song for you. You got your wheels, you got your gears. You ride around town without any fear. You got your pedals, you got your brakes. You always wear your helmet for safety's sake. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing the best that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you.